I get asked a lot when it comes to consent why people don't just say no. Because if people would just clearly say stop, then everything would be better. So let's talk about it. There's a lot of reasons in my experience why people will decide not to say no. And a lot of times it's not even a conscious decision that's in their head. It is something that happens organically because of lifelong experiences with setting boundaries around our bodies, around people touching us, like that kind of thing. And so it's important to recognize a couple of factors here is that one, when we want someone to tell us that we've made them uncomfortable, we are saying, I don't care enough to monitor how you're doing. Once I get any indication that I'm good to go, I'm just going to go. To hell with you. And that's a problem. Two, the lived experience of most human beings, by the time we are young teenagers, we have gotten clear messages, regardless of our gender, that there are a lot of situations in which it's not up to us if someone is touching us, and that setting that boundary can make things unsafe. And this is families insisting on hugs. This is parents using corporal punishment. This is tickling wars when you've said no, and how you can get in trouble for setting a hard boundary when you don't want to do that. This is when someone in your friend group is really huggy and you're not. This is being socialized to expect to be uncomfortable when people are touching you. Now, there is a gender gap in how much this impacts people. Girls, by a very young age, are aware that it is not safe to say no to boys to certain things. And I'm sorry, this is a society we live in. We need to recognize this so that we can move forward into a society that's not like that. And it is getting better. Yay, because we're having these conversations about consent. But all of that builds up into a response that's instinctive, where it's like, if I say no, what will happen? If I say stop, what will happen? And then we also have to look at this next piece, which is that in these situations where we're saying, typically to women, that they need to step up and say no, we're talking about situations in which they've been made very aware that their consent is not part of the program. So this is situations when someone has said, look, I don't want to do this, and the person just keeps pushing anyways. You've already shown me you don't care what my boundaries are, so how do I feel safe being firmer about them? Where someone has waited until we are inebriated or otherwise vulnerable in order to initiate contact, which is a very, very, very clear message that it's not about our consent, it's about them finding an in, and that is more important than our participation and our enthusiasm. It's about all those moments where you're like, I'm not in the mood, I don't feel like it. And the person is like, well, what about me? Don't you love me? And all that sex nagging that happens, which makes it very clear to a person that it's not about their pleasure, it's not about their willingness, it's about wanting to take. And as soon as someone has that mentality, there's no point. And um, that's where our brain goes. Protect ourselves rather than constantly having this same fight. We also get exhausted by having to constantly explain why our bodies belong to us. And there are days where we just don't have the capacity to do that emotional work. And that's not a green light to have sex with your person or to start touching them. And so when we talk about why people aren't saying no, we need to look at what the actual question is. And in my experience in having these conversations with couples and thruples and even individuals or in groups even, that the person who's saying, why don't people just say no? What they're actually communicating is, I feel really uncomfortable with the idea that I have to make sure my person that I'm touching wants me to touch them. And that is a bigger conversation. And that is what we need to be having.